Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. My name's Betty. You don't know me. The reason my channel name is You Don't Know Me is because you don't know me. But to the ones out there that love my videos, that leave me nice comments, that leave me emails, that make me tear up of the love and joy, thank you so much. I thoroughly appreciate you. And if someone hasn't told you that you are beautiful or handsome today, I am telling you, you are beautiful and you are very handsome. And let me tell you something else. You have all of the beauty and qualities inside and out that you need and the tools to be able to help other people. I come here to inspire each and every one of you to become a better you every single day. It's not easy out here. It's hard, and many people are evil, but we can rise above the evil, and we can balance it out, and we can have the strength and the honor, and we can make people feel better and take that evil and throw it out the window. Please subscribe to my channel. Please leave a like. Please leave a comment. Whether they be good or bad, I still like to read them and engage. And if they're too bad, then YouTube will remove them, or I will report and remove them. But thank you and so much for everything and all the blessings and amazing people that I have met throughout the years on this YouTube. I just want to give you a big thank you. And let's go. It's time for the video now. Welcome to my channel, You Don't Know Me. Today I'm going to be starting to read a book that is called The Adventures of Peter Gray. In 2018, I had entered a contest and I won this book. And he wrote, "To Betty Washam, thank you for participating in my book giveaway. I hope you enjoy reading about Peter's amazing adventures across historic New York City. This is a fiction book and everything in it is fictional. So I do have a brain injury, and this is the reason that I have not read this book, is because I have a hard time pronouncing my words correctly or being able to read in general. But I came a long way over the past few years, and I really wanted to do this. So you can just sit back and relax and just enjoy this story. I'm not sure how far we're going to get today. The book is actually 239 pages. I read fairly fast when I am able to read, and it looks like a fairly easy book to read. So let's get started. Chapter 1, New Year's Day. I hate having olives in my soup. There, I said it. Nurse Whiteley, if you're reading this while going through my possessions again, do me a favor and stop serving that dreadful vegetable. I don't care that the home wants me to stay healthy. At least keep olives away from any of my served meals, especially my afternoon soups, all right? Thank you. I can't believe I'm writing this, but Dr. Callie, that snarky canon, said this is a good way for me to get everything sorted together after all these months. I spend hours upon hours staring at the typewriter on my desk. I don't know how to make this seem less ridiculous. The best wolf foreign in New York to know my entire life story is me. Oh, and a couple others still walking. Still, I couldn't argue that I needed to sort things out, especially with time ticking by. My senses are still keen at my age. I can feel the dry air on my gray and fur that indicates it's midsummer. Cheers from a house not too far away, followed by a boom that tells me 4th of July celebrations are happening early for a couple of cubs. Happy early birthday to me, since it's only mid-June. From my door, I can barely hear the mindless chatter of a television playing in the lounge room, telling the story about a group of castaways stuck on an island. My wife is laughing at the program. I can't help but fall for her heavenly grace all over again, listening to the tinkle of her laughter. A truck full of happy-go-lucky teenagers drives past our home, with cheering howls. And from my open window, my poor eyes still make out the silhouette of New York's skyline several miles on the blue horizon. I taste the whiff of a cigarette smoke from someone on their break. My mouth waters at the smell of the freshly baked muffins Miss Diligent made for her ailing grandmother in the opposite room. These days, most grandcubs and kids dislike the idea of visiting elders. They think people like us will stay forever. How foolish they are. That another year wouldn't change a single damn thing. Most people don't even think about how much a single year can impact a life or save one. No one stops playing their fancy radios, singing Top of the World, or watching I Love Lucy on their colored televisions to ever be thankful for what's been given or is being given. Nobody kneels down and thanks the Lord for how much a single year can impact who you are, who you have become, and who you love. No one even thanks him that much anymore. Truth be told, I was one of those furring growing up. When I thought of a comfortable life, I pictured no set boundaries and a decent meal each day. I pictured open and limitless freedom from painful pasts and unknown futures. However, little did I know that 1 year and a certain human boy with brown eyes and a stubborn neck of determined humor would change everything. It began on January 1st with a sleeping cub till last year of the 19th century. It was a quiet yet simple dream. I felt a soft bed underneath me, a warm fire heating the corner of the room, but I had a sting on my muzzle. There was a tray next to the bed filled with a glass of milk, a roll of bread, and grapes. I lifted a paw toward the tray, my mouth watering and muzzle twitching. I was so hungry, I pounced. Hitting the side of the wooden barrel woke me up, dazed and groaning. Instead of roaring fire, I heard Manhattan's relentless, clanking batter. In the place of a blanket's warmth, frost covered my mudded fur, and the food, my overturned barrel, was bare. Good morning to me, I grumbled and rubbed my noggin. Ugh, gotta stop sneaking sweets, Peter. I crawled out from behind the wood barrel to smell the different scents, from the musk of frozen soot to the hidden musk of random fern. Placing my paws on the alley ground, I stretched and shook the frost from my tail, fur, and clothes. I was glad the barrel hadn't rolled away last night, and I still had a place to sleep. Reaching inside my trousers, I sighed in a wolfish relief at feeling my father's pocket watch. Part of me had been afraid it had fallen out or been stolen as I slept. Curious, I decided to check the time. 8 o'clock, 8:07, I said aloud, even though there was no one in the immediate vicinity to hear me. I jumped a foot at the sound of grumbling noise in my stomach, tail shivering into a ball. Better get breakfast soon. I widened my eyes, the rumbling roaring louder, and before my stomach eats me too. Even wearing a coat and my cap between my ears, the chilly air kept sending shivers up my semi-frozen tail. I couldn't let that stop me. The streets were alive with the shuffling chatter of people and furring, the rattling of the horse carriages rustling by the droves as I avoided broken glass and icy mud puddles on the cobblestones. The downtown shops were open this early, and I could see the smoke of their chimneys pumping out. Looking ahead, I saw the butchers, barbers, craftsmen, pie makers, steel workers, and a couple of harbor dashers down the street. One particular shop caught my eye, the local bakery. David Kinnick's Bakery. Words David's Bakery hanging over it, its inviting, sweet-smelling doors. It stood on the corner of Henry Street and Oliver, not too far from the Brooklyn Bridge and some tenements. To the east, I saw a charity house bustling with life. Extra, extra, read all about it. I spotted Broomley, the 8-year-old German Shepherd Newsy, calling out, extra, extra, read all about it, he shouted with purpose and chattering teeth. New element, random discovery by female scientist and husband. I ain't making this up. Morning, Bromley. I shivered in my coat. Think the crowd's gonna be interested in this random stuff? I chuckled to lighten the mood. The kid's black ears perked up, and he looked at me with a smirk on his face. Morning to you, too, Peter. Glad to see you. You're still alive. He trembled as a gust of wind hit us. Thought you had died in last night's storm. I ain't dead yet, I replied with a grin. You could send Mother Nature herself, and I'd still be jittering around like a dancer. I clicked my footpaws together a couple of times and he laughed. Broomley smirked, then went back to being a newsie. As the gentle fox walked by, he asked, Want a paper, good sir? Only a cent. The fox shook his head and moved on. Bromley turned to a badger walking by. Want to read up on the news, sir? Seeing him busy, I waved as I went into the bakery. The smell of bread and pastries was powerful, but I didn't complain. The low lighting felt nice on my eyes, and the crackling heat of a nearby wood stove warmed my fur. With a sniff in the air, I could tell the baker wasn't here, leaving breads and sweet treats to tickle my nose. Before my paw nearly snatched into one of the counter's muffin displays, a backroom door opened, and out came a scruffy old wolf in a dirty baker's uniform. Not seeing me, the old relic placed freshly baked muffins into the baskets. I had ducked in time. With white and murky fur as the snow outside, and a bulk as big as the door, David was intimidating enough, despite being mistaken as Grandpa often enough. Part of me knew better. I stood up with a cheeky smile. Hello, David. I swished my tail. Had he seen me reach for the muffin? How you doing? David lifted his head up with a cynical grin. Glad to know you survived the storm, Peter, he chuckled. It'd be a pity if my moist, in-depth customer froze to death. I ignored that and sat down, glad for David's bakery being unique enough to have tables for loyal customers. You got anything for a fellow wolf to eat? David wiped his paws off on an apron. Sure thing, he said with a wolfish smirk. You care for a fresh muffin? Hot out of the oven? He grabbed one and tossed it to me, its warmth burning my paws' pads. Just as I placed it to my watering muzzle, the old wolf shouted, That'll be a nickel out of you, though. I paused. Can't you give me another tab today? I pleaded. I'm turning into a skeleton here. Times are hard. You already got a tab of $1.09, David pointed at me. And I need the money for my family, Gray. Come on, I begged, clutching the muffin. Please. The old wolf crossed his arms and didn't budge. Fine. I took a coin from my pocket and tossed it at him, then watched as he caught the nickel in the air. Satisfied? The old wolf placed it in his purse. God bless you, Peter. My canines dug into the delicious muffin. I mumbled between bites. Call yourself a good Christian, my tell. David cleared his throat. What was that? I almost stumbled into the counter. How's the wife? You good Christian? David smirked again. That's what I thought you said, he chuckled. He finished putting out all of the muffins on the trays as I gulped nervously. The family is wonderful. If you want to know, weather's bad, but there's enough firewood and blankets for us. That made me stand up straighter. Was the baby born yet? I asked with wide eyes. And Rosie, is she okay? Fine as a baby cub can be, Peter. He beamed with a brightening smile. Rosie's been recovering from childbirth since the day after Christmas, but she's fine. Can't blame her. I bit into the muffin again and wondered how he had learned to make muffins like this. I've heard childbirth is very painful. Don't get old yet. Live life in the now, my mother used to say. Amen. I bit down again, nodding at the moist, buttery taste. Still got the talent, David. Probably the best of the best here. I think I should go and tell every gent I see about this wondrous muffins. Don't you agree? David scoffed. If you're trying to get that tab removed, think again, cub, he said, promoting me to act sheepish. Still, a nice try. I sighed, noticing my breath steam up the glass of the counter. Oh well, at least it isn't like the orphanage. Minutes later, an older yet beautiful she-wolf came down the stairs. A brown dress peeked from underneath a short coat and scarf. She glanced at me with her green eyes and a smile. I casually went back to nibbling my breakfast. Good morning, dear. She leaned over and kissed David on the cheek. David swished his tail happily. Morning, Rosie. He kissed her back and groaned at the sight. How's Edith? He turned to me and explained, my niece from Philadelphia is visiting for a couple of weeks, so be on your best behavior, boy. I perked my ears at the curious news, but before Miss Kinnick, or Rosie as she preferred, could answer, a soft voice called from the stairs. I'm doing fine, Uncle Dave. Little Johnny is still asleep. Is there anything I can do to help? I looked up and flushed at the sight of she-wolf older than I, wearing on her fine ashy dress and a red silk scarf. She looked to be no older than 16, and a pretty she-wolf at that. Nothing I can think of right now, Edith, David said without turning from the counter. Rosie, do we have raisins in the back room? I'd like to make some more cinnamon raisin rolls before the Baxter family comes in. Rosie glanced up the stairs. Edith, can you be a dear and check the supplies for raisins? There's an ice box to the left. Edith sighed and came downstairs. Fine, Aunt Rosie. There was a hint of boredom in her voice as she looked at me at the foot of the stairs. I stood up straighter, wiping my crumbs from my cheeks. Her ears perked as she asked, Who's the little feller? And an apprentice of yours, Uncle Dave? That got a good laugh from David and I before he lumbered to the back of the room. The name's Peter, ma'am. I greeted her like I was a gentle wolf. Trying to act formal, I added, Peter Gray, and I'm sorry to say I ain't his apprentice. Right, you aren't, David called from the back of the bakery. If I took Peter in, he'd steal half the muffins and all the dough. My ear folded down in embarrassment and I frowned at the truth. Nice to meet you, Peter Gray, she smiled broadly at me, showing her perfect canines. I'm new to the city, so you're the first beggar I've met. I blinked. I had not expected her to say that. Rosie chuckled as she headed upstairs. I couldn't contain my smile as I stared at how beautiful Edith was. She was exquisite. Hey, Peter, why are you staring at me? Edith asked innocently. Do I have something on my face? I blushed. Edith raised an eyebrow, her tail curling. No, sorry about that, I apologized. I didn't mean to. I scratched the back of my twitching ears, avoiding eye contact with her. I swallowed hard, trying to find my charm again, my grin reaching ear to ear. It's just, I've never seen such a beautiful she-wolf before. Edith giggled. That's so sweet. Peter, but you're a touch too young for a lady like me, she said, playfully tapping my nose. You are a cute cub. I kept my smile and tried again. Too young, you say? I asked. I've had my fair share of ladies, dear Edith, but none were ever as sweet as you. Why, are you trying to flirt with my niece, Peter? Want me to turn you into a rug? David called from the back room. I could see him now making his way to the front of the bakery, quite fast, too. I froze. I glanced at Edith, but she was rolling her eyes. Apparently, I was the only one to take David's threat seriously. David crossed his arms, glaring in my direction. Moments later, he smirked and turned back to his duties by the oven. While you were allowing Peter here to give googly eyes to you, Edith, I checked in the back. We've got no raisins or sugar. I'll need more eggs, too, for the afternoon rush. Edith's ears perked in surprise. Does that mean you want me to go to the main market for you? That I can see New York? No, not until they clear the snow and pigs fly out of my oven. David laughed at his own joke before pulling muffins off the oven rack. Edith pouted as she grabbed a piece of fresh bread, smirking at an idea in my noggin. I leaned closer to her. Don't even think about it, Peter. I casually scooted back, then blushed when Edith giggled at my antics. Rosie waltzed down the stairs in a thick black winter coat, carrying a bag in her paw. I'll go get the supplies, Davy, she said. Anything else? Actually, yes, honey. He recollected his list of needed items for her. Sure thing, dear. Rosie took a muffin cooling on the counter and a bit into it. Needs a sugar topping, but it'll sell. Do you need more flour? No, we've got enough till the next shipment in a few days. What would I do without you, love? David kissed her, much to my distaste. As Rosie headed to the door, David suddenly spoke. Wait, is it okay if Peter guides you, my dear? I perked my ears. Huh? Me? Why? Oh, that's not necessary, Rosie said. I can take care of myself. She glanced at me and then to David's worried eyes, then flicked her tail at me. Then again, it would be helpful to have 2 extra paws to carry the bags. I can come help too, Aunt Rosie, Edith said, with her tone enthusiastic. I spotted her putting a coat on and wondered if she'd put it by the door to be prepared. Please! That'll be another pair of paws to help. Rosie lowered her gaze at me. Peter, mind helping me out? Davy, can you take $1 off your tab? Get us home by 11 o'clock, and he'll give you a free loaf of bread. I stood on my foot paws, eager as a beaver. Let's go! Then, let's not dilly-dally, ladies, I said, giddy, opening the door. Fine, then, David said. The 3 of you go. Come back soon, dear. You too, Edith. Then he pointed a sharp claw at me. And if any harm comes to my dear wife or beloved niece, I'll skin the fur off you and use it as a welcome mat, Peter. I'll take that into consideration, I said. More customers were starting to come in. As I held the door to the bakery open, I said, Afternoon, madams. Rosie giggled with a wagging tail. Why, thank you, kind sir, she said, walking out into the street. Edith. Such a proper little cub, Edith chuckled. I groaned, but kept my charming, wolfish grin pasted on my face. The winter blew into my eyes and slapped my muzzle hard. I pulled my coat tight and held Rosie's paw on my arm as we walked to Alan's place. The market in the neighborhood. I had tried holding onto Edith's paw too, but she-wolf had tisked at me. She seemed content to place her paws into her coat pocket and marvel at the streets. She likes me, I shivered with the wind. If it gets any colder, David will soon get his welcoming mat. On the way, we passed the time by making small talk. So Edith, I said, tell me about yourself. Edith turned to me curiously, as did Rosie. What would you like to know, Peter? I glanced down at my icy footpaws. Well, I asked, what brings such a beautiful wolf here, for example? Even though I was watching the ground and wasn't looking up, I knew she gave me a curious gaze. In that case, she began with a wagging tail. I happen to love baking, like Uncle Dave, and mostly pies and breads and such. I also love learning and want to be a teacher. The girl could talk and kept going and going, so I did the polite thing. I nodded like an idiot as I listened. A gust of wind nearly flew my cap away, and I scampered after it, making Rosie laugh. Edith shivered, her arms crossed to keep warm. Philadelphia is cold, but this is ridiculous. She curled her tail around one of her legs. Welcome to New York City, Edith, Rosie joked. We turned the corner, and the traffic increased. Should have been here in the blizzard of '85. Couldn't get you through town as if the plague had hit. I exaggerated, shivering myself. So scary. Edith raised an eyebrow. You weren't born before 85. I gave her my charmer smile. So? I asked, swishing my tail wildly along the icy gravel. Who says I don't look older? Edith waited to reply until we got through the crowd of gents. You do not. You look more like a little school cub. My ears folded down. Rosie and Edith laughed at that. Oh, speaking of which, Edith glanced at me. Do you go to school, Peter? My ears swirled upward. Oh, me? I asked, grinning. Nah, I'm a poor wolf. Never attended a day of school in my life. You don't? Edith gasped. Much to my dismay. Peter, there's no need to hold my paw, Rosie spoke up, changing the subject. Even though she was old enough to be my mother, I often considered Rosie to be more like an older sister and glanced at her to help me. Even when David was at his most cynical of me, she had used sarcasm to keep him in his place. Feeling sheepish, I let go. Sorry about that. I apologized between shivers, quickly adding, David did ask me to escort you ladies after all. Rosie shook her head and giggled. Davy's only being overprotective since little Johnny was born, she sighed. My ears perked. Hey, Davy. Never thought of old David as Davy. Watch it. Before I could say Jack Frost, a blunt object sent me a dozen feet over and into the snow. I landed on my tail in the snow and fell muzzle down into the slush. I saw stars and mushy snowflakes in my eyes, but I didn't move. Are you hurt, Peter? Rosie asked while a shocked Edith helped me up. A horse nearby and distant voices rang in my ears, as well as a bell. Hopefully it was a bell, as another pair of paws lifted me up out of the snow. Peter! I opened my eyes to see a brownish-black furred raccoon, my height and age, and worried expression on his face. You hurt? Break anything? Not my spirit, Lance. I stood on my footpaws. Been through worse than being hit by a sled. Edith helped me onto the sidewalk. You sure, Peter? That fall looked bad. Sure am, I nodded, shivering but brushing off the snow on my pants. I glanced at the raccoon. Lance, why did you hit me with the sled? He could have gotten seriously injured, Rosie said. The raccoon gripped his sled tight. Hee, sorry about that, Peter. Sorry, Miss Kinnick, Lance said, curling his bushy tail around his paw. Santa Claus got me a sled for Christmas. I guess I didn't watch where I was going. So sorry about that. A Catholic raccoon, Lance Turner, was no taller or older than me, but he was more dedicated to his faith. He was also one of my best friends. We had known each other for nearly 5 years, and the raccoon and I had gotten some real bruises from our meets. He was a funny guy when not quoting scripture, though I couldn't say the same about his older twin brothers. I shook my head and smiled. It's nothing. I'm all right. Good to see you again, Lance. How are you? Your brother's doing? Lance shrugged. Bobby and Billy are being Bobby and Billy, as usual, and Mother's still a laundress. You? Before I could answer, he pointed his muzzle behind me. Who's she, by the way? Your girlfriend? That got Edith and me both blushing. Actually, this is my niece, Edith, Rosie said. Peter is here helping us with getting groceries. Lance raised an eyebrow. Since when has Peter become a good Samaritan? I was about to bark back at the raccoon in defense. Instead, I changed tactics. Rosie, Edith, we gotta get to Alan's place before David gets impatient. They realized, too, the time had slipped by, and we took off for the marketplace. See you later, Lancey, I called. Lance waved from him with amusement, his sled in the other paw. Bye, Peter. Squished between several apartments and smelling of a mix of candle wax, foreign musk, and the feces of vermin, we arrived at Alan's place in no time. As she-wolves gathered the items they needed, I glanced at the furring helping them. It was Alan himself, a 6-foot mouse with black fur, an unpleasant face, and covered in burly muscles. I knew the guy and had once stolen a package of cheese from him earlier in my youth. I prayed the mouse didn't recognize me. "Thank you, Alan," Rosie offered with the big mouse a few bills. "Peter, Edith, you ready?" We hurried back, but not before Edith and I slipped on a patch of ice. At last, we arrived at the bakery's welcoming door. I slammed it shut after Rosie went up to the counter with the groceries. I staggered over to the wood stove to warm up, right next to a shivering Edith. "You're later than I expected." Old David came over to the counter and stared me down, his paws folded across his chest. "So I get to skin your hide and use it to wash the clothes, Peter Gray?" Frozen with literal and figurative fear, I gulped. "Leave him alone, Uncle Dave," Edith said with the rubbed paws together. Tired, I shrugged his words off. "Do whatever you want with me, as long as I get a warm piece of bread and $1 off my tab, right?" "You did promise him, honey," Rosie called from the stairs. "And by the way, wolf fur doesn't get rid of any stains in clothes." David paused, then laughed heartedly. "I'm just kidding, honey." He flicked his tail at me. "Anyways, I do owe you one, Peter, so I'll take $1 and 2 nickels off your tab, okay?" I perked my ears and waved a nibble finger. "Uh-huh, you still owe me a loaf of bread, and don't honest fathers keep promises?" I grinned wolfishly. The old wolf groaned. "The least I can do for protecting my lovely wife and niece." He tossed me a wrapped roll. "There ya, happy?" I frowned. "This is half a loaf," I complained. "You're trying to cheat me, David." He smirked. "You were late by half an hour, so you get half the reward." He laughed out loud before getting back to work. Folding my ears, I grumbled while I ate the warm bread. "Hey, Peter," Edith stood beside me. I never got to thank you for helping me and Aunt Rosie out today." She placed my cap on the counter and patted my head for fur, her tail wagging behind her dress. "You're very sweet for a guide." Feeling her scratch my burning ears, I touched the back of my head. "It's no problem, Edith. Your aunt needed, and Edith kissed my cheek, and I started blacking out with a massive grin across my muzzle. Instead, I struggled for the counter and stumbled with my footpaws, my furry cheeks blushing. Then I saw David's stone-cold eyes and felt my blush lose its colors. You're welcome, Edith. I'll see you around." David barked at the thunderous laugh. "Ha! Happens every time." I ran out, but knew I'd return. Chapter 2. New in the Neighborhood. I hope you're enjoying this, and let me know in the comments as to what you think about my reading. "You filthy brat!" The restaurant owner, drunk off his tail again, threw the bottle at me. He missed my ears by a mere pinprick. "Go back to the sewer you crawled out of, you hear? Stay out of my garbage." "I heard you already, old caller," I shouted and jumped as the glass shattered behind me. That got a growl from me. He grabbed another empty bottle. "I ain't no badger mutt. Go, get out of here." I dodged his next bottle, fleeing out of the alley. A couple of passing furrin looked but turned away, the screams of the elder cat still ringing in my ears. Boy, if I ever ask a hungover cat for food anytime soon, it'll be too soon. Further into the street, Manhattan's howling wind mocked me for not visiting yesterday, before the cat deemed sober enough to say, "No table scraps, good day." Maybe he's drunk all the time. Nah, doesn't matter. I walked down the road of the apartments where many different species took shelter. Musky badgers, big wolves, curious cats, and a few older otters shivered in the winter wind. Some of them hurried by in their own worlds, their breath forming a low cloud above them. As a cub, it almost made me want to lift up a paw to touch it. The cold air no longer felt like Antarctica, but had enough warm up enough to make my fur prickle. The wind lessened too. Even so, I kept cursing Mother Nature for her presence in New York when she could have been in Alaska. Making my way past Henry Street, my thoughts turned to David's bakery. Edith had returned to Philadelphia a couple of days prior, but not without saying goodbye to me. I'd arrived at David's for lunchtime, just as her carriage ran off. I tried running to wish her goodbye. I fell into muddy snow and heard laughter from David's doorway nearby. I couldn't get more than a kiss on a cheek out of her. That she-wolf is more like a vixen. Hey, cub, would you like a new pair of boots? A raccoon vendor asked me after he crossed the road. He had a single tooth, and his musky stench made me gag. I didn't try hiding my distance. These are made of the finest leather in all the East Coast, and I'll give half. And I'm a crown prince of England. Not interested, I mumbled, passing by. We can't even wear boots. After some traveling through the cold streets, I stood leaning against a tenant building by Cherry Street, my eyes focused on the cloudy sky. You just love making me miserable this year, don't you? I asked God above, my eyes rolling at the silence. Pushing into a crowd nearby, I shook icicles off my tail and rubbed my numb paws together, almost frozen solid. After about an hour or so in the cold, my limbs felt hardened as stone, my tail becoming too heavy for me to sway. I needed to get warm soon, or I'd become an ice sculpture for all the Manhattan to see. Nearing the local school, I got a neat idea in my noggin. Lance and his older brothers would be done soon and out of their classes. Their parents happened to own a furnace heater, really good for them being a raccoon family. All I had to do was go to their home, beg a bit, and I'd be warmer than a moth in May. Let's hope I can woo their mother, or I'll be joining mine above. After half an hour of digging through snow, through crowds scurrying away without worry, I made it to the east side. Yes. In all my life, I never felt more at home there. The dwellings were small and sometimes cramped, but it became lively in winter and summer, at least when school wasn't in session. I noticed a couple of young spaniels playing on a slippery road while their elder yelled at them to be careful. I even spotted Old Man Holler screaming at the street lamp to watch itself. "You hears me, sir?" he hollered, making me chuckle. "Stops to stand in there like you light up the place." I spotted the school's iron gates on the open playground, grinning. I ran over on my footpaws in a jiffy and waited. It'd been 10 minutes since the bell should have rung, and I was almost a frozen icicle. I looked like a wolfish gargoyle by the iron gates. Would you hurry up, raccoons? I muttered. I swear, if that bell doesn't ring soon, I'm gonna wring their necks. I breathed on my paws and groaned, "Somebody hang me!" The bells rang and gleeful grin formed across my frozen muzzle as cubs and kits of all species scurried outside. Raccoons, mice, foxes ran by, laughing as I stood there. I earned myself a few noticeable stares. Can't blame them, but the others didn't notice a frozen wolf dying beside the gates. A 12-year-old badger came out with a group of other carnivores. "Hey, Peter," he pointed at me and chuckled. "Glad to see you survived another night." He waved, walking through the front gate. "Thank you," I waved back, wishing I knew his name. My ears folded as the badger's parents avoided looking at me. Few of the parents liked their cubs talking to unturned that roamed the sixth wood. They sometimes looked at me as if I were Paul Kelly from that nasty 5 Points gang. I'd run into the gang on Mulberry Street and by a cross and steered clear of their surprising ways of making a quick dollar. Speaking of surprises, I didn't even notice Lance running straight at me. So deep in my thoughts was I. Peter! I staggered forward and grinned down at the raccoon. Glad to see you, buddy, he said. He let go of me and widened his green eyes. Good Lord, Peter, are you okay? Seeing his confused face made me chuckle. Okay. I sneezed into my paws and shivered. I'm frickin' icebox. You asked me if I'm okay? After twins, Bobby and Billy, had arrived, Lance agreed to give me time with their heater. And to help my tail warm up, Billy borrowed his coat. As we walked over to their tenant building, southeast of the 5 Points neighborhood, Bobby spoke to Billy. Do you think Mom will let the wolf in for heat? Not sure, Billy replied. I flicked my ears and frowned, aware of Miss Turner's disapproval of my dangerous lifestyle. I doubt she'll let him live ever since his last visit, Bobby said. I frowned deeper at their snickering. Hey, I barked, clearing my throat. I pulled the warm coat tighter as a gust of wind whipped around us. It was an accident, and I wasn't thinking. Last time she saw you, you tracked dirty snow into her kitchen, Lance grumbled, totally deadpan, and you ran out laughing mad when she threw a spoon at you. Oh, yeah, Billy giggled behind us. Remember the look on her muzzle? She was angrier than a rattlesnake. He and Bobby laughed. Wouldn't be surprised if she baked you into her next pie. Again, laughter. It was easy to ignore their teases, if only for one's coat's warmth. Still, my footpaws felt numb enough for me to stagger several times. Lance helped me up while Bobby and Billy got distracted by some cubs riding on the back of a streetcar. A bloody streetcar? Add insult to injury, Billy grabbed by his coat off me. Hey, I yapped at him. That's rude. Come back. Sorry, Peter, Billy replied and jumped onto the moving car. I'll be praying that you get warm soon. Same here, Bobby said, leaning up the streetcar's railings. Bye, Peter. I hope you don't freeze to death. The twins waved, laughing, as the streetcar rolled on. Remind me to shave their tails next time they ask for my help, I said to Lance. Gladly. He agreed with the curling tail. I'll also make you a coat from their tail fur. On the other paw, riding one did seem like fun. That little idea got a laugh from us as we hurried to his tenant. Through windy corners and winter sunlight, we arrived not far from the tenant the raccoons lived in. It was a quiet street, even if the trash clogged my nose like a smoky chimney. The snow helped, as well as the fact a butcher living nearby and helped cover the smell with the fresh meat odors. However, the factory still coated the sky with black soot. Whoa! I froze in my tracks. So did Lance. Did you see that? He asked. Beside the carriage stood two creatures I thought I'd never see. Both had the skin color of a pig, yet walked on two straight legs. Their muzzles were squished flat, and they had small, stubby ears covered by wool hats. They wore coats and gloves, probably made out of wool from feral sheep. One looked older than the other, was me and Lance's age. They both carried bulky luggage cases, while a large puma in a thick coat helped them. That's the last of it, the elder creature handed coins to the puma. Thank you for your help, sir. Have a wonderful day. The filling furline eagerly took the money and went away with his carriage. Yet the onlookers to me and Lance's left stood curious and cautious at the sight. Gosh, Lance gasped. Are those humans? I nodded, still staring. I'd heard of them, but had never seen two this close. What else could they be? Humans were a very strange species, having no fur or tail as a distinct feature to the bodies, nor any claws or large fangs to hunt. Their short angular noses didn't smell as good compared to wolves or bloodhounds. I remember once reading in a newspaper that humans were scattered across the planet and often thrived in bands like packs, keeping together. Others preferred the cities over countryside, but humans were kept far below the foreign in the food chain everywhere, always under the foreign, especially the carnivores. It wasn't until decades ago that they were freed from the chains of slavery in America, thanks to a powerful wolf in the White House. Canines still look down on them as dirtier than sooty snow, but I chose not to. As long as they had a stove and coal, any human was a friend of mine. Lance and I inched closer until the young one saw us approaching. Turning to us, my blue canine eyes noticed the human's younger brown eyes looking back. We stared at each other for seconds, then a smile brightened his face. Hello, Mr. Wolf, he greeted, pausing. I tried to hide my snicker. Then he called out, Dad, are they, our neighbors? The older human glanced at us and paused from carrying his luggage. He looked surprised to see us, his eyes the same as the young man's, milky brown. Not sure, Sonny, he grunted, then gave the same cautious glance the boy had given us. Wolf, raccoon, are you with them over here, to see if we're in trouble? I could tell he was talking about the crowd of adults gathering on the other end of the street. They think a freak show rolled into Manhattan. While Lance was hypnotized by seeing human up close, I decided to be more of a social cub. Nah, I'm not with that a lot. I formed my muzzle into a smile. My friend here, though, lives next door to you. The raccoon still stood speechless like an idiot. Hey, Lancey, wake up! I snapped my fingers, and he dazed out of his dreams. Hello, sir. He walked next to me, keeping his eyes on humans. Do you need any help? The young boy grunted as he carried a box to the top step, then set it down next to the older human. I was about to ask the same thing for your friend, the father asked, concerned. You look like you're frozen. You look like you're a frozen statue, lad. He must have been referring to me, and obvious as my tail, huh? I chuckled, curling said tail around my left leg for lingering warmth. It's freezing out, and I'm turning into Hudson River. The son raised an eyebrow. Don't wolves have thick fur? He asked, poorly hiding his amusement. Hey, having fur doesn't make me a fireplace, I said, and mine is thick. The father looked at another piece of luggage and grinned. Would you like to come inside? He asked. I'm sure my wife has already started up the stove to warm us up. You could get sick staying out in the cold. My eyes lit up and a smile formed across my muzzle. Oh, God bless you, sir. Thank you to the ends of the earth, sir. With a wagging tail, I happily strolled over to the man and extended a paw to shake his, what was the word, hand? I'm Peter, sir, Peter Gray. The raccoon that's staring at you two is Lance Turner. I wasn't staring, Lance quipped, embarrassed with downturned ears. It's just, well, I've never seen a human this close before. The elder human laughed. It's okay. I can say the same about you two. I'm Henry Lawton, he said, and shook my paw. It felt weird shaking the hand of a human, but his felt firm in my grip. The younger version of myself is my son, James. James, say hello to Peter and Lance. Hello, Peter. Hello, Lance. James' face lit up as he climbed the stone stairs to the door. A little help, please? Lance quickly moved up the stairs and opened the door for James. I am Mr. Lawton. Then went up to the flight of stairs to the third floor. Minutes later, Mr. Lawton gave Lance the key, and he opened the door for Mr. Lawton while they brought the last of their luggage inside. I'd been in many tenants before, but never in a human's tenant room. The two other humans were inside, both female, and wearing colorful plain dresses over pinkish skin. The older female had to be his wife, and the little girl their daughter. I felt a sharp pain on my tail as James closed the door. Dang it all! I yelped, baring fangs. Oh! While Lance fought back, snickering, the human boy rambled out an apology. "Oh God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." James whirled to the open door, allowing my tail to move, ache, and throb. "I hope it's not broken," James said. I glanced in annoyance at the human boy, then to the door behind me. Yeah, wooden demon." I kicked the blasted thing, and it felt as if my footpaw's bones shattered. Dang it, dang it, dang it. I hopped on my other footpaw, glaring at Mr. Lawton as he watched from the corner of the room next to the human girl sitting at the table. He. She clapped her tiny hands. Funny doggy. She had to be no older than a kindergartner, maybe 3 or 4 years old. She was adorable regardless, so I couldn't be mean to her for laughing at my misery. But I ain't a little doggy. I'm a wolf. Mr. Lawton shook his head in amusement. And his little bundle is our daughter, Annabelle. He introduced her to me and hugged her. Then he turned to his son again. Be more careful next time, James. From what I've heard, Furin are very sensitive with their tails. Sensitive? Try brittle as a twig, I muttered. I smoothed the fur out and whined, but began laughing as soon as I saw the stove on the other end of the room. Please excuse me. I scooted past him and placed my thawing fingers near the stove's flame. Ah. Well now, did you adopt a child without my permission, Henry? The human wife asked as she placed wood in the stove's burner. She shook her braided head and seemed surprised but polite. Who's the raccoon over there? Lance shuffled behind me, cleared his throat, but I kept focused on the warmth of the stove. I'm your neighbor, ma'am, he said to Miss Lawton. The name's Lance Turner, and the street urchin trying to burn his paws off is Peter Gray. I frowned at Lance's comment and turned my nose away from his direction, paws still close to the blissful stove. If you spent your entire life out in the cold, you'd beg the nearest friend for a warm place. Lance folded his ears and I rolled my eyes. Kidding. So where are you from, James? I can tell you're not New Yorkers yet. The raccoon quickly changed topics. Boston? Philly? Chicago? I pretended a gasp. Jersey? Buffalo? Annabelle squeaked with a kicking feet. We're from Buffalo. Miss Lawton tossed something onto soup she had been making. Up close I could tell it was a spice, and the smell made my paw water. Yes, we came all the way from Buffalo, she confirmed. My husband got a job here in a factory that pays more, and we thought a change of pace would be good for the children. We looked to James as he went to his bedroom to put his stuff away. Honey, remind me to go look for milk in the market tomorrow, Miss Lawton said to Mr. Lawton. You could look for milk station by one of my parks, maybe Central or Mulberry, I suggested, sitting down on a chair. I smiled and curled my sore tail onto my lap. They gave me 1 jug out of there for 3 pennies each. Mr. Lawton guffed at the information. Really? Well, Laura, it looks like we'll have to walk a bit to get the milk. Miss Lawton stuck her tongue out and stirred the pot of soup. You want, dear, she replied, her tone sarcastic. I'm not freezing my bonnet off and walking over to Central Park to get 1 jug of milk. Mulberry Park it is, he replied coldly. Hey, James, he called, entering the kitchen. James stood in the doorway. Soon as it gets a tad warmer, you want to join me in exploring New York after school? Mr. Lawton asked. Yes, James nodded. I perked my ears at him, and so did a curious Lance. What? I've never been to New York before, and it's humongous. I chuckled with the human boy and managed to get a nod from Lancey. So, how much about the city, Peter? James asked. I smiled and wagged my thawed-out tail. Why, yes, I do. My new human friend, I replied to the wide-eyed pinkish cub. If you know me, I suggest soup's ready, Miss Lawton proclaimed. My special recipe of broccoli and steak soup, fresh from the pot. She turned to me and Lance. Would you, young Furin, care for some? I was about to ask how she cooked that together, but the delectable smell got to me. Sure. While Lance was eager to have a bowl, he hesitated. The overwhelming aroma made my tummy growl louder than an African lion, so I had a taste. And did I love it? Oh, good Lord! Not only did the soup stop my hunger, but the taste sent my tongue in an eager addiction for more. Mr. and Mrs. Lawton were kind enough to allow me seconds, along with a slice of bread she bought at the market earlier. Almost done with the soup. I looked at Mr. and Mrs. Lawton happily. Are you two angels? Because this soup is heavenly. I chewed on another morsel of bread. I hope you have enough money, though, Lance said, rubbing his fuzzy stomach. I'd hate to be, robbing off of you. Don't worry, you two, Miss Lawton said with a smile. She ate a bite of bread, then grabbed a napkin to clean Annabelle's face. There's plenty to go around, and you can't starve yourself forever. Besides, James spoke up, patting my shoulder. We'd be bad Christians for not helping fellow New Yorkers out, wouldn't we? Especially if one of you is our new neighbor, Mr. Lawton said. James here's starting school tomorrow, and I bet he can't wait to make new friends. When James commented on how he's already made some, both of us beamed. So Peter, Lance, what grades are you in? I paused, with Lance glancing at us with mild cheer. Well, I'm in my second to last year of primary school, he said to Mr. Lawton. But Peter's, I felt my ears fold and heat. Well, I'm not a regular cub. Memories of the orphanage came back, and I managed to shake them away. When the humans looked to each other blankly, Lance added, Peter's been an orphan his whole life. Miss Lawton gave me a motherly blue eyes. She looked sad. Oh, she said, how do you survive? I lifted my muzzle and attempted a wolfish grin. Well, I grew up in The stair doors suddenly opened, and a familiar muzzle appeared with a good smell. Hello! It was an elder raccoon who carried a baked pie in both her paws. Oh, hello, sir. You must be Mr. Lawton, my new neighbor. Our eyes locked like a predator and prey, but she was the predator and I was the prey. I stood up, more frozen than before. Lance choked at a moment. Mother? He gasped. I gulped in fear, then chuckled. Hello, Miss Turner. I scratched the back of my noggin. You look lovely, lovely today. Anger burned in her eyes, and I knew what she'd say next. You devil! Come over here, she ordered. Now! Gotta go now. See you later, Lance. I sprinted to the nearest window and down the fire escape as Miss Turner stretched her paws at me. I jumped to the icy ground and groaned, nearly slipping. I shouted, Welcome to the neighborhood, and thanks for the soup, Miss Lawton. So tomorrow we will do Chapter 3. Let me know in the comments what you think. Please subscribe, hit the thumbs up, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a magical night, and I'm out.